Two of the greatest speeches ever given in this country were the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln and the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. Excuse me a minute. This is where he stood and gave that famous speech.
Black men and white men.
All you have is an etching in the concrete. There's no plaque, there's no sign. Millions of people trample all over that, not even realizing how important that spot is. He says, I have a dream. I call this stepping on the dream.
I'm Daryl Davis. I'm a musician, actor, author, and a lecturer. People always say to me, Daryl, how can you have this stuff? Well, why don't you burn it? As shameful as it is, you don't burn our history, regardless the good, the bad, the ugly. And the Ku Klux Klan is as American as baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
Hey, Frank, how you doing, man? Hey, Gary.
Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
Here's my great Titan robe. You want me to put it on?
Yeah.
We've got members as young as 18, and we also have junior Klan members.
We would fight to the last bullet for our people.
Okay, so what can we all do together as a nation?
Help save the white race.
Help save the white race. On this gracious great balls of fire. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? Look at me and tell me to my face why you would lynch me.
This country's been through a lot.
It still has a long ways to go.
An awful long way, as news will tell you.
I'm mad. We should all be mad.
We have a society that has determined that we should fear the black man.
Give that person a platform. Allow them to air their views, and people will reciprocate. I never set out to convert anybody. In my quest, some of them ended up converting themselves.
Mr. Davis, welcome to the program of N1 Television.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
First of all, you once said that you saw the future when you were a kid. What does that mean?
What it means is this. In the 1960s, in the early 1960s, in fact, starting in 1961, I began traveling overseas with my family. My father was a U.S. State Department Foreign Service, so I grew up as an American embassy brat because my dad was, a U.S. diplomat. So going to school overseas, starting in 1961, at the age of 3, my classes were filled with kids from all over the world: Nigeria, Italy, Germany, Sweden, Australia. Anybody who had an embassy in those countries, all of their children went to the same school. And that was my first exposure to school. And as you know, you get assigned to a country for 2 years, and then you return home back here to the States for a few months, maybe a year, and then back overseas again. So each time I would come home, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And there was not the amount of diversity that I had in the classroom overseas. So literally, I was living about 10 years into the future when I was overseas, because that multicultural environment did not exist yet in my own country. It would take about 10 years for it to get here, but I was already living it when I was overseas. So that's what I mean by I was in the future.
And talking about that, when you came home, when you basically gave your life to music at the beginning, you are and was a musician. You once said that you were the only black guy in a country band that played in all whites bar, and there was something going on there that triggered your later and current work.
Yes, this is after I graduated college with my degree in music. I joined a country music band because country music had made a comeback, and all the clubs were switching their format to country. So, if you wanted to work full-time as a musician, you played what was popular. So I joined this country band, and I was the only black person in the band, and usually the only black person wherever we would perform. So we were performing one night in a place called the Silver Dollar Lounge. And the band had played there before. They were an established country band in the area. I'd never been there, but I knew the reputation of this bar. And this bar was an all-white bar. There were no signs that said all white, nothing like that, but it had that reputation. And black people did not go there. They were not welcome. And, when you go somewhere where you're not welcome, number one, and number two, alcohol is being served, it's not a good combination. So here I was in the bar, and we played our first set and took a break. And then I was going to sit down at the table with the other members of the band, and a white gentleman came up to me and he put his arm around my shoulder. And he told me he really enjoyed the music. And this was the first time he had seen a black man play piano, like Jerry Lee Lewis, who is a famous rock and roll piano player from the 1950s. And I was surprised that he said that. I was not offended, but I was surprised because Jerry Lee Lewis got that style from black piano players who originated that style of boogie woogie. And I said to him that, I said, I got it from the same place Jerry Lee did. Well, he did not believe me. And even after I told him that Jerry Lee was a good friend of mine, and he had told me himself, where his influences were. So, but he was fascinated with me that he wanted me to come back to his table and have a drink with him. So I went back to his table. I ordered a cranberry juice. He paid the lady, and then he took his glass and he clinked my glass and he cheered me. And then he says, this is the first time I ever sat down with a black man and had a drink. And I was totally shocked. I could not believe that in all the years this man had been on this earth, he had never sat down with a black person before. So I was not, I was naive because I had sat down with thousands of people, white or any other color, and had a beverage, a conversation, a meal. And this guy had not done that. So I asked him why. And he didn't answer me at first. I asked him again, and his friend kept telling him to tell me. And so he finally said, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And I began laughing at him because I did not believe him. And then he produced his membership card and he handed it to me. And I recognized the Ku Klux Klan insignia. And I stopped laughing because it was for real. So I gave it back to him and we discussed the Klan and some other things. And that's how that started.
And that is your really more than 3 decades long activism in approaching people on that spectrum, from Klan members to extreme right movements, neo-Nazis. And you don't like to say that you convert them, but you talk to them and basically they themselves then decide to do that. Why did you start doing it? First of all, because some people, don't go this way. They leave on the activist side. They fight on actions to ban this kind of groups. Why did you decide personally to dedicate your life to this?
Initially because of an experience that I had at the age of 10 when we had returned home here one time from overseas. And I was participating in a scouting march. Again, I was the only black scout in this parade. And while everybody was very friendly and cheering us and waving and all kinds of stuff, there was a small group of people at one point in the parade route that began throwing things at me and hitting me. And I did not understand it. My initial reaction was, oh, these people over here on the sidewalk, this small group, they do not like the scouts. And that's how naive I was. So it wasn't until my scout leaders came running and they covered me with their own bodies and escorted me out of the danger that I realized I was the only scout suffering this kind of treatment. And I did not understand why I was being targeted. I had no clue it had anything to do with skin color. All because of my background, where my first exposure to friends were from all over the world. That was my initiation into friendship with other people. And so I kept asking the scout people, why are they hitting me? Why are they hitting me? I didn't do anything to them. And they kept saying, shh, move along, hurry up, it'll be okay. So they never addressed the issue. They knew what was wrong. I had no idea. When I got home, my mother and father, who were not there, they thought that I had fallen down and scraped myself up. And I said, no, this is what happened. And I told them, and they sat me down and they explained to me what racism was. I had never heard the word racism. I had no reason to, because I did not grow up in a racist environment. So I had no idea what they were talking about. And it made absolutely no sense to me, because my 10-year-old brain could not understand that somebody could judge somebody else solely on the color of their skin. And the thing that made it even more difficult for me was the people who were doing this to me looked just like my friends. So that can't be, that's impossible, you know?
And later, when you got older, after that story you told us in this bar while you were praying, basically your motto in your work was the question or the constatation: how can they hate me when they don't know me? That
is correct. So, you know, it didn't occur to me right then and there, because I still had not found the answer. You know, I was 10 years old when that happened, and I'd been looking for the answer, and nobody was able to provide it. So I was with that band for maybe 6-8 months, and then I quit. I went back to playing rock and roll and different forms of music. And so I left the band, so I never saw the Klansmen anymore initially. And then after a while, it occurred to me, Daryl, the answer to your question that's been troubling you since age 10, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? It fell into your lap. Who better to ask that question of than somebody who would go so far as to join an organization that practices hating people who don't look like them and who do not believe as they believe? You should get back in contact with that member of the Klan, because they are the most hateful organization in this country. So if anybody would have an answer, it would be a Klan member. So get back in contact with him and see if he will introduce you to the leader of the Klan, and you can interview him, because there have been no books written by Black authors on the KKK from the point of sitting down and interviewing them face to face. So mine would be the first. So that was my idea.
Do not come into our city and try to rewrite history.
In Charlottesville, emotions are raw, tensions still high. 4 months after hate turned into homicide here, members of the Ku Klux Klan showed up and were confronted outside court. They're here to support a member of the Klan who did this.
You can't do anything in this town.
But in the midst of those trying to scream down hate, a rare occurrence.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Daryl Davis, a blues musician, and an imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan agree to meet and find common ground.
As Americans, your Confederate history is as much a part of my history as my Black history is a part of yours.
Sure it is.
And it's time that we got to know one another.
You're exactly right.
Throughout your idea, what you said, you basically counted several hundred, if I'm right, people who, after talking to you and being in contact with you, decided to leave these groups.
Well, I met several hundred, but I would say just over 200 have left so far.
Mm-hmm.
And as I pointed out, I did not convert them, but I was the impetus by giving them information. You know, I don't try to teach people what to think. I try to teach them how to think, and then give them information and let them decide, you know, what is factual, what is not factual.
The American society was basically, and you were discussing that a couple of times, and in this movie and in some ways in your book, was built from one side on white supremacism and the other side on slavery. This year was really hard concerning with the pandemic. We had the George Floyd murder. We had this huge movement on the streets of United States. But you argued in a way that, you know, this time and maybe this kind of mainstream politics that came into America with Donald Trump just encouraged these things, but they were always there.
Yes, they've always been here. Donald Trump did not invent racism. Obama did not invent racism, or Bush or Carter or Clinton or anybody. It's always been here since we came here 401 years ago. 2020 marks 401 years that I have been here. as a descendant of slaves. The first slave ship landed here in 1619. So racism has always been here. But unfortunately, it's never, I mean, yes, we try to address it all the time, but we have not seen such major changes occur so rapidly until now, 2020. And the difference being that in marches of the past, with Dr. Martin Luther King through the 1960s, starting in 1955 with Rosa Parks and the bus boycott, all that, we have always had white people participate in our marches. Not a lot, but there have always been some, but mostly Black. And so the power structure, which is predominantly white, all they see is a big sea of Black people and a few white people. So they shut their ears. They don't want to hear what we have to say, and they don't listen. But today, when they look at the marches, they are seeing many, many people who look like them as well. And so now they're like taking out their earplugs and they're listening. And that has caused major changes in our society. We've never seen this many white people participating in our cause. Part of that is due, of course, to the George Floyd lynching, and as well as the coronavirus. I don't want to put any praise on the coronavirus by any means, because over 250,000 Americans have died as a result of it. But we have to take into consideration what was happening. George Floyd is not the first person to be murdered like this. There have been many, many others, but unfortunately, they were not addressed properly because of our racist society. So because of the coronavirus, people were home because they can't go to work. They're on lockdown. So what are they doing? They're watching TV. They're on the internet. And they're seeing this murder unfold before their eyes. And they're thinking, oh my goodness, that's what those Black people have been talking about for decades. I don't believe it. I'm watching this. I must do something. So despite the risk to their own health, they go out in the streets and protest and march against this type of behavior. We've been marching about it for years and years, and now they're joining us. So you look at the difference between the marches of the past and the marches now. That collective voice is what has brought about more rapid change. Yes, we brought about change ourselves, but it was very, very slow in coming. But now with that collective voice of different people saying the same thing, that has brought about more rapid change. In the past, it would take months of investigation if a police officer were to be charged and fired. All right, today it's happening boom, boom, boom. And also the ripple effect that we've never seen before, that was unrelated. These marches and protests in the wake of George Floyd's murder and lynching were geared towards the police. But as a result, we had a residual ripple effect. That ripple effect consisted of the sport of racing cars, NASCAR, which was a big hub for the Confederate flag to be flown everywhere. They banned the Confederate flag. The state of Mississippi, which has been considered one of the most racist states in the United States, even has the Confederate flag as part of their main flag. They have removed that symbol now. The food labels, Aunt Jemima syrup and Uncle Ben rice, they've changed the brand pictures now to be less, racist. There has been legislation to remove some of these Confederate statues and change the names of buildings that were named after slave owners and Confederate leaders. So we're seeing this residual effect that we've never seen before. Why is that happening? Because there are more people from different walks of life, whites, Hispanics, etc., marching together. That collective voice is what we need to focus on, because that is what brings change in this country.
Before we will get back to that, that was a very interesting point that you made, but I want to go with you through let's call it a psychology. So you enter this world, you approach these people. Some of them, all of them are leading their normal lives, and still in 2020, they dressed in these robes, and they feel like stronger in this kind of hate group, and some of them commit also hate crimes, race-related crimes. What's in the heads of the people you talked about? And basically in this conversation, those who convert at the end themselves, what do they tell you as a feedback? How did they, come to the ends of what they were doing?
Okay. What's in the mind of those people is superiority, supremacy. They are considered, and they call themselves white supremacists, meaning that they are superior, and anybody who is not like them is inferior. And they teach themselves, and have been taught incorrectly, that this country is a white man's homeland, and it belongs to white people, and that black people have their place, which is below, and whites on top. And some believe that everybody who is non-white needs to go back to where they came from.
Yeah, but it sounds, I'm sorry, we know what we're experiencing around the world altogether concerning radicalization, either, be it right-wing, white supremacist, Islamist at the second hand. So this kind of approach in 21st century, how do you put it into perspective still?
Okay, well, a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. And there is a lot of ignorance and stupidity in this country. I'm just going to put it bluntly there. Now, some people want to say that ignorance and stupidity are synonymous. No, they're not. In my definition, an ignorant person is someone who makes the wrong decision because he or she does not have the facts and the proper information. A stupid person is someone who has the facts and still makes the wrong decision. So we need to separate the ignorant from the stupid. And fortunately, there is a cure for ignorance. That cure is called education and exposure. And that is what I am providing to people who don't know the facts. And I expose them to it, I educate them to it. And when they see it, they get an aha moment, and they begin changing their ideology. But there will be those who see the facts, but they don't change. And those are the stupid ones.
Talking about those two, which you've mentioned, there is also a third group, and that is those who manipulate this kind of feelings of people, this kind of point of view towards the society and the world for their political gain, and maybe, an economic gain. We see it all around the world, that they're like foot soldiers on the ground, but there are some other people back home and, they're
pulling the strings.
Yeah, pulling the strings. So how do you relate those two?
Yes, there will always be those, and we have those in our country, and they come in all colors. There are people who will manipulate their own and try to manipulate other people for their own political gain. So you have to point those things out. You must point those things out. You must understand what is going on here, and you must always seek the facts and expose the facts. One thing is to have an opinion. We all are entitled to opinions, but there's only one fact.
How come that KKK is still, not some banned group, terrorist group? Because, this is not just question of the First Amendment, freedom of opinion, but they are doing some, and they've been doing since their beginning, serious crimes.
Because we have a very racist country, and many of our leaders, from dating way back, even presidents of the United States, have been members of the KKK. President Warren G. Harding was sworn into the KKK in the green room of the White House. President Harry Truman, before he became president, he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan for a very short time. He did not like it. He got out and went on to become president. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black was in the Ku Klux Klan at the time he got the appointment to the Supreme Court to become a Supreme Court justice. He had to leave the Klan in order to sit on the Supreme Court. We've had senators, governors, all kinds of high-ranking officials and family members who have been members of that terrorist organization. So it's not until recently that people have begun to call it a terrorist organization. We, as Black people, have always called it a terrorist organization, but now people are beginning to see it for what it is. And another thing is, it has not been addressed as it should have been because of racism in our country. But now, because we're seeing it firsthand, and the damn it, I'm talking about the collective we, not Black people, are beginning to address it. And because things are being stirred up like never before. So this is why it's being addressed.
How many of these robes have you gotten handed to you by Klan members?
I probably have about maybe 44, 45.
Wait, how many robes have you gotten from the Klansmen?
About 44, 45. And Klanswomen.
And Klanswomen?
Correct.
Who have said what?
They're done. As a result of meeting me and having these conversations, not overnight, but over time.
What was the feeling when one of these people gave you for the first time as a present his robe?
I was exhilarated. You know, it was unbelievable, because that robe and hood is their badge of honor. That's what they fight for. That's what they die for. That's what they take a blood oath to join. They go through a ritual to join that organization, and that becomes their family. It would be like a U.S. general taking off his uniform and giving it to somebody in ISIS or Al-Qaeda, because I am their enemy. But all of a sudden, the light came on, and that robe and hood they felt was dishonorable, and so they wanted to remove it.
Let's go to the thing that you pointed out, that this year maybe brought this overall societal shift in the mindset. Still, we don't know. But we definitely, and we saw that in elections, we see in the United States the change in demography. So how does, demography affects these kind of processes?
Okay, here's what is happening in this country that unfortunately the media, for whatever reason, refuses to address, even though they know it's happening. White people have always been a large majority in this country. But now that's beginning to shift, all right? The demographics are changing. This used to be a predominantly white country. The landscape was white, and now it is changing color. And what the neo-Nazis and KKK and alt-right people tell me is, Daryl, I don't want my grandchildren to be brown. They call it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation, through race mixing. They're seeing the color change, and they are fearing that their population of white people is diminishing to almost nothing. Now, that's what happens over time. And there are plenty of white people in this country that welcome that. They say, hey, I don't care, it doesn't bother me. I have no problem with that. But there is another percentage that are becoming very nervous and unhinged about this, because you look at it like this. When you have sat on the throne of power for 401 years, that's a long time. You don't want to get off. Nobody wants to give up power once they have it. I mean, you look at a certain man here in our country right now who's only sat on the throne for 4 years, and he doesn't want to give up, all right? So nobody wants to give up power once they have it. And so they're seeing their numbers come down, and it is well predicted, rather accurately, that by the year 2042, which is 22 years from now, this country will, for the first time, be 50-50. 50% white, 50% non-white. Non-white, it means Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. And that is causing an angst in the supremacy movement, because they know between 2045 and 2050, they will become the minority. And they're very fearful for that. And this is why you're seeing all these groups pop up and say, come join us. We're going to take our country back. We're going to make America great again. We're going to build that wall. We're going to get rid of all those immigrants. And so people, out of fear, because their country is changing the color, they go and join these groups. But what happens? The group fails to live up to their promise of take our country back, make America great again. So people get frustrated who have joined those groups. And some of them will say, you know what? If the Ku Klux Klan can't do it, or the neo-Nazis cannot do it, I'll do it myself. And they walk out by themselves into a black church and shoot up people, or into a synagogue and shoot up people, or into a predominantly Hispanic area and shoot up people. These people are called lone wolves. They're acting on their own. And we have intelligence agencies in this country that have operatives who can join these groups undercover and gather intelligence and squash the plot, like you saw about a month ago, almost a month ago, where some of our operatives in intelligence, they joined this group that was going to kill the governor of Michigan. Because of those operatives, we were able to foil that plot. But because we can infiltrate the group, but you cannot infiltrate a lone wolf. It's only one person. So how do you get inside one person? So as we get closer and closer to 2042, unfortunately, we're going to see more and more of these lone wolves. We saw one just a month ago with that 17-year-old boy who came from Illinois with his gun into Wisconsin, and he shot 3 people. He killed 2 and injured a man's arm, and then he went home. That's a lone wolf.
And maybe just coming to an end, we saw in these elections that America is divided still. Even though, you know, Biden won, there is a huge amount of people who voted in 2020 for Donald Trump. Concerning his narrative, concerning basically that, you know, these kind of movements were emboldened by this period of time that we had, you know, various things going on, you know, from Charlottesville to today. Are you an optimist in this regard, concerning what you just said?
Yes, absolutely. And let me just point out something about Donald Trump and people who vote for him. I've said this before, and I'll say it again because I strongly believe this. I know this. Not everybody who votes for Donald Trump is a racist.
Yeah, of course. But there was a narrative that emboldened these people.
Yeah, but while I say that not all Trump voters are racist, all racists are Trump voters. Okay, so he has 2 camps: those who are non-racist who vote for him, and those who are racist who vote for him. And the interesting thing is, both of these camps do not like each other. And we've never seen that dynamic before with a president, whether it's Obama or Bush or Clinton or Reagan, whoever. They each have one base of people and they all like each other. But Trump has 2 bases of people who don't like each other, but they both like him. And this I consider this to be the best time of our life. As bitter as it may be out there, you must look at the other side, because now these issues are being addressed, and they should have been addressed decades ago. Had they been addressed decades ago, we would not have Charlottesville. We would not have all this nonsense that we're having right now in the streets. But that is our fault for not addressing these issues. We put them under the carpet, we lock them in the closet, and eventually they're going to blow up. So now they're being addressed, and that is a good thing.
And some people said that you were wrong to approach to these people. We saw in this movie about you, some members of Black Lives Matter that basically said, you know, you're doing the wrong thing. We need to amputate them. You cannot. Well,
you know, some people said that, you know, sailing to the end of the horizon was the wrong thing too, because you fall off the face of the earth, because the earth is flat.
So this land is your land?
It is. It's our land.
From California to
the Redwood Forest.
Yeah. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
just for the end, you worked also, I have to ask you that with, you've mentioned Jerry Lee Lewis, you played with Chuck Berry.
Uh-huh.
How was that, you know, when you look at that time, you know, in the 60s, that was, you know, the strong 50s.
Let me tell you something.
Time. Yeah.
You know, let me tell you, you know, we owe those people. Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Buddy Holly, Fats Domino, Bo Diddley. These people who were the rock and roll pioneers. Rock and roll was invented by black people. It was popularized by white people, okay? But, you know, back at that time in the 1950s and even before, music concert venues were segregated. If they allowed black people to come in at all, there were sections, seating sections. Blacks had to sit in this section, whites in that section. There were signs that said that colored seating only, seating for white patrons only. You've seen pictures of the colored restroom, colored water fountain. It was the same thing for concerts. If you and I went to go see Frank Sinatra, we could not sit together. We had to sit in different sections as designated by the color of our skin. How crazy is that? Well, people did not break the law. They would go to the concert and they would sit in their section because you would be arrested if you crossed that, all right? But in the 1950s, something happened. There was a new form of music. And this new form of music that appealed to teenagers, which is what was invented by Chuck Berry, all right? It caused teenagers to get up and dance and knock over those signs. Black kids and white kids, for the first time in the history of the United States, were getting out of their seats and dancing together. Now, these kids did not know each other. You have to understand this dynamic. These white kids and these black kids who were dancing together never met each other because in the 1950s, they did not go to school together. Schools were segregated. They didn't know each other, but they were coming together because of this music. So the establishment did not like rock and roll. It was causing race mixing. So they would shut down these concerts. They would ban these concerts. Some of them called it a communist plot or the devil's music because it was causing integration. So when we think about the great civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and many other black and white people who participated in this, we should not forget that while these people were working hard through marches, protests, boycotts, demonstrations, sit-ins to bring white people, white adults, and black adults together, these rock and roll people were achieving that with white kids and black kids through their music. So we need to give them credit for rock and roll.
And never underestimate the power of music.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, so much for this.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.